Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The Trump administration proposed a 2026 budget that would gut the nation's top workplace safety research agency, leaving critical programs unfunded and hundreds of experts sidelined. The Senate Appropriations Committee reversed most of those cuts, but that's nowhere near final, leaving the future of federal safety oversight uncertain, and the stakes are high. Here to break down the funding fight and what it means for America's workers is Lorraine Martin, CEO of the National Safety Council. Ms. Martin, thank you so much for joining me.
Terry, thanks for having me.
The National Safety Council came out with a very positive statement for the Senate's approval of the 2026 Labor Age Appropriations Bill that had funding in it for OSHA and for NIOSH, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. Tell us what is so critical about that funding right now.
Well, thank you, Terry. And yeah, the Labor H bill that came out of the Senate Appropriations Committee, as you said, authorizes or recommends the funding for both our key safety programs within the federal government. That would be OSHA, which I know a lot of folks are familiar with, and NIOSH, which some folks may not be as familiar with. And both of those organizations are critically important to giving guidance, research, understanding what our safety risks are across all industries, and then making sure that we have the tools and the resources to make sure that people go home at night. And making sure that we get those agencies fully funded is critically important. The president's budget didn't do that. It cut the OSHA funding significantly, and it basically drastically cut NIOSH and curtailed pretty much all its research and all the investigation work that it does. So we're really hopeful that the Senate Appropriations Committee then will go to the Senate to pass those appropriations bills, and then we'll look to hope that the House does the same.
There's a couple of challenges here. For one, OSHA is in the Department of Labor and NIOSH is in the CDC, so it can be difficult to keep those organizations aligned across departments, I would imagine.
Actually, Terry, I have been able to work with both of them for about the last 6 years as I've been in this position, and it's amazing how much collaboration they do have. NIOSH is responsible, as I said, for understanding what the risks are, how can we abate those risks, whether it's wearing masks or whether it's having certain kind of procedures and fall protection, whatever it might be in our workplaces. And then OSHA's responsibility is to share all that with workplaces, explain how to measure, explain how to have programs in place within your workplaces to ensure that we keep people safe, and then to have both support and compliance related activities. So they really are kind of bookends to the safety challenge. And I haven't seen much air between them, truthfully. They have been extremely coordinated, supportive, and critical, truthfully, to industry, ensuring we have all the tools that we need, not just compliance and assistance, but also research and data and information about what the risks are and how to abate them. And you have to have both sides of that, NIOSH and OSHA, to make that happen.
Well, that is good to hear. We need to hold them up as an example of cross-organizational collaboration. But at the same time, the Trump administration has proposed, as you said, dramatic cuts to both of these. What do you think the administration's strategy is here? Do they have a backup plan? Do they just want to ignore occupational health?
Well, I sure hope not, Terry. Everybody, I'm sure, who is in the federal government wants each and every worker to go home safe at night to their families. I never have questioned that. And I would be very surprised if anyone doesn't hold that to be true for their own family and for everyone that they represent and everyone in their lives. So I think the challenge is that, the federal government is looking for efficiencies. We understand that. All organizations, big and small, are always looking to do the best they can with the dollar they have. But the challenge is going to be that we can't have efficiency be trumped over actually providing support and good safety recommendations and safety research. So my understanding is that, we're hunting for things that don't make sense anymore to get rid of regulations, especially in the safety world. And there are some that truthfully could be retired at this point. They don't serve us at this point. They were appropriate at the time, or perhaps ones that need to be significantly updated because they were written 40 and 50 years ago and technology and practices have changed so much. So I do understand the desire to be more efficient, one, and two, to update the practices that we recommend and the enforcements that are based on them. But we need to do so always making sure that safety is top priority, not just throwing out regulations to throw out regulations. We need to be able to tell industries from top to bottom, big, small, medium-sized enterprises, large, every industry you can think of, what safe looks like and how to make sure to keep their people safe. And the federal government is best positioned to do that so that we don't have sort of a mishmash of recommendations across our nation.
I'm speaking with Lorraine Martin. She's the CEO of the National Safety Council. Well, let's talk about some of those regulations and risks. What are some of the emerging occupational safety risks that really need to be addressed through the programs at NIOSH and OSHA?
Yeah, so clearly the things that we always know hurt workers are still on our list, and that would be things that have high energy, gravity, falling, motor vehicles that could strike people, energy, electricity. Those are still in all of our work environments, and they must have the right kind of precautions around them. At the same time, we're starting to get a lot of equipment in our work environments that are automated or have AI in them, and robotics, which is fantastic for production and for productivity, but they also come with ensuring that we keep the humans that are around them safe at the same time. So some of our regulations, something called lockout, tagout, that the safety geeks on your call here today will know what that is, but that's basically how do you take a piece of equipment that has energy in it, it's operating, and make sure that it's not operating and doesn't have energy when a human needs to get near it, and make sure that we do that safely. There's tons of technology now that we can use that when that reg was written didn't exist. And so that's a great place where it's time to update that regulation and make sure it's consistent with the technology and the practices that we have in our workplaces. So AI, automation, I would say transportation-related risks are all things that we need to have at the top of our list.
You've also expressed concern about the prevalence of opioids in the workplace. Tell me more about what you're concerned about and what you want employers to know.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. We still know this is a huge impact on Americans today, and a significant number of people are still losing their lives in our communities due to opioids and other related overdoses. In the last couple of years, we've also had an incredible tool, a tool that we can have in our workplaces so that folks can address that emergency on the spot. And it's naloxone, which is the generic name for some of the brands that you would have heard, like Narcan. And having that in our workplaces so that folks are not only trained, but can address a crisis when it does occur. 75% of employees reported having some kind of opioid use impact their workplace, whether that's an employee or a family member or even a customer in their workplace. But in our recent survey, only less than 20% felt they were prepared to actually address it. So we know that there's a gap there, that we can provide resources. We have free training for workplaces to train their employees on administering naloxone, and then just have it as part of your emergency response. This is affecting all Americans. Many of them have jobs, clearly, and many of them bring these issues, whether it's with a family member or themselves, into the workplace. And we need to be ready, and we have the tools. They're not that expensive. We have been campaigning for all federal buildings to have naloxone in them, and we've got some legislation that's been percolating around, bipartisan, to do that. Some states have started to do that for their state buildings, and we're really looking forward to this really just being just like an AED or a fire extinguisher. You have your naloxone in your workplace so that when that emergency happens, that person has a life on the other side.
That's so important. And you mentioned advocating for legislation. Are there other reforms that NSC is supporting that would stabilize this workplace safety infrastructure?
You know, I don't know. I can't think of anything specific, Terry, except for really navigating some of the regulations that are looking to be perhaps sunsetted and making sure that we are really careful that we only sunset regulations that are either out of date and no longer needed, or somehow we have something to replace them with. I will say that we also are working with industry to do what's called sort of industry consensus standards, so that we can also bring to the government and say, here's what we think safety should be today, because we all learn things. Safety is not static. What we thought was safe a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, we have tools and we have other ways of looking at things that tell us that we should do different. And so we are updating and leading a industry consensus standard that we will be bringing to the federal government too. So, because sometimes they can reference that and get there faster than actually doing regulation on the government side. And they're aware of our activities, supportive, I think, of the activities, and we're hopeful that will give us another way to reset some things at a much better place.
As you look forward, what are the most important risks and challenges and then opportunities that you see to help keep Americans safe at work?
Yeah, the number one thing, and Terry, I'm not sure your listeners would even register this, the number one thing that causes fatalities in the workplace is a transportation-related incident. 37% of all fatalities across industries are from some kind of a vehicle-related, whether it's a fork truck in your warehouse, a delivery van delivering something to someone's doorstep, someone who's on a bicycle doing their DoorDash. It's the highest risk. It's also the highest risk of the thing we do every day is get near our roads. And so I think making sure that we understand that roadway safety, transportation safety is workplace safety is something we've been talking to both DOT, Department of Transportation, and Department of Labor over the last 3 or 4 years, and we're going to continue. And I think we're really hopeful that we'll get some collaboration between those two departments. They've started that work, and we're really excited to see if that's something we can all lean into. It's the number one killer. It should be where we're putting our focus. For decades, OSHA and NIOSH have saved lives and kept families whole. Their programs, their work, millions of Americans depend on it. And now really is not the time to dismantle what has been keeping workers safe over decades.
I've been speaking with Lorraine Martin. She's the CEO of the National Safety Council. Thanks so much for being here, and thanks for your important work.
Thank you.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.